if people have more of a fixed mindset, they don't tend to develop. And it's a real challenge. Where somebody has a growth mindset, like it's almost the sky's the limits for them. Probably all sales leaders have been guilty of this. Like sort of the line that I came to is like, if you treat your team like losers, like don't be surprised when they play like it, right? I would see people who are exceptional closers or exceptional at getting deals done, but they were perpetuating a really toxic, negative culture within the org. The early people on your sales team are so important for what lies ahead, and they're the foundation for how you're going to scale, right? And so for me, it's a reminder that this is not just your individual pursuit. We're all here to help each other. We need to be good to each other. We can't be having conflict.
How do you actually, build a winning culture? Because I know you have sort of like a playbook that you step by step walk through, steps that is needed to build that winning culture. Hey Tom, how's it going, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, Michael?
Can't complain. Living the dream one day at a time. This is what I always say. Good to see you. I'm super pumped having this conversation today because we're going to talk about how to build a winning sales culture. But before we get into it, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, who you are, what you're working on these days, so others can get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I guess for me in my career, I've spent the vast majority of it in startups, typically either being the founding sales team member or joining just shortly after like a Series A. So there's like maybe some salespeople in place, and then I come on to lead the team. So I was the first employee at a startup after grad school, started leading sales within 6 months of my career, which was really interesting. I was doing solar down in the States. Did that for a little while, had 2 acquisitions, ended up working for 2 publicly traded companies through that. Then came back, I started working in the Canadian market in prop tech, led sales for a company called Properly. We were pretty big. We were sort of like Canada's Zillow, if you want to liken it to something. Scaled that up, then was recruited to join Together, which is B2B, very large enterprise, selling to logos like Netflix, Microsoft, companies like that. And we're doing mentorship software and peer-to-peer learning. And then I was the VP of sales and strategic accounts, led our GTM strategy. We went to go do our Series B, and then we got a really attractive offer to sell the company. So we did that. It was my 3rd successful acquisition, and normally they pay you to stay on or that sort of thing, or there's some reason to stay on, but they just paid us on the equity up front. So they gave me the money, and then I quit the next day, which was great for me because I'd already been through going to the bigger company, and it's just not my style. And then I ended up, it was my intention to take some time off, but then I ended up joining a company called Median as their CRO, and I'd been an advisor to the CEO, helped them create their sales team, was coaching the head of sales for 2 years prior to that, came on as CRO, and then just wrapped up actually as CRO so that I could build out my TW sales business, just building on doing fractional CRO work and advisory work with clients.
Amazing. It seems like, again, you showed up at the right place at the right time and did the right thing, and you got the benefit from it. Congratulations again. This is such an interesting journey because it resonates a lot. I did a lot of founding sales, and now I'm doing my own company. It seems like you're walking through the same path. Like, hey, I've been in sales, I've been in the trenches, then I got into leadership. Right now it's my time to build my own practice, which is always amazing. So what's the focus today? What are you doing with TW sales? I know you said fractional CRO, but it seems like you're really culture focused when it comes to building sales. So I wanted to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, good question. Well, I get a lot of, so I write a lot on my website, and I write articles, and basically what I'm trying to do is, and I just put them out there for free, like anybody can go read them. And so what I was trying to figure out this year was, I guess, why I've been successful. And so, which maybe that sounds silly, like maybe most people know exactly what they're doing all the time, and they don't have to sort of figure it out. But yeah, but for me, it's like, when I joined Together, my first 6 months, we set a record every month for most sales in a month. I joined in July. By the time we got to December, we 12x'd the previous December. we were scaling profitably. Like that wasn't with me adding a bunch of headcount. We had actually decreased marketing spend. And so it's like, okay, well, how does that happen? And then, I was hearing about the challenges the company was having after I left. And so it's like, well, why would that sort of like dwindle away? And then when I joined Median full time, I switched us from one-time fees to an ARR model. And basically it was like, if a customer was paying 20K once, now they're paying 20, like we didn't really change the price. Like it was like 20K annually. And then we started setting records again, which normally if you make that sort of change, you'd expect your monthly sales to go down, and ours actually went up. And so I was trying to figure out, it's like, okay, well, like, how do I achieve these results and so fast, right? Basically, the thing that I sort of landed on as I was working through this and figuring out what I do really had to do with this sort of winning culture article that I've been writing. It's fairly long now, like it's at about 12,000 words, I think. And I did a talk on it in August at a sales TO event. And people were so receptive, and I think I had maybe 100 people reach out to me or something like that, and it was an audience of maybe 300 at most. People, yeah, it would really resonate with people, and I didn't really realize how unique some of these ideas were. And so it's like, okay, that's great. And so to answer your question, the companies and folks that I'm working with primarily are companies from basically 0 to about 10 million in ARR. Like that's a pretty well-worn path for me. And then working with founders who are doing founder-led sales themselves, so like very early stage. Founders who are effectively the sales leader, whether they want to be or not, or even realize it. But, they have a few salespeople come on and effectively, they're the CRO. So working with those folks, and then also working with the sales leader at startups. And so I do some other things as well. Like I'll do things with teams and around sales skills and that sort of stuff. But primarily those are the three sort of groups that I'm working with.
This is amazing. Thanks for sharing. So let's talk about that article because I read it through. It was very
Okay, good.
interesting. And the first thing I wanted to actually share and get your thoughts on, you said, look, meaning isn't about having the best salespeople, and it's about creating a system and a culture that make any salesperson with the right mindset and behavior exceptional. So can you expand on that? What does this even mean practically?
Good question. And you did read my article. I think there's a lot in that. Like the first, maybe most important point is that I think about sales success as being sort of based on three pillars. So the first one would be sales skills, the second would be mindset, and the third would be behavior. And I think for the most part, people think about sales success as being about sales skills. Or they're like, oh, that person's a natural. Or they think about somebody talking, or they think about like a Don Draper type going into the pitch and just like crushing it, right? And being really eloquent. And I think sales skills are important, but of the three, I actually think they're the least important. And so that was something that I learned very early on in my career. Like I said, I got into sales management within 6 months of grad school, and it's amazing they let me manage sales at that time when I think back on it.
Early
But
stage
like,
startups.
yeah. And we were doing B2C, and so it was like I had just an army of salespeople across the United States. And so we'd bring on these like big training classes of 20, 40 people, something like that. And I always thought it's like, oh, okay, like the guy who seems or the woman who seems like most like a salesperson or seems to have the most sales skills or most like a natural, it's like they're going to be the successful ones. That's what I thought initially. What I ended up seeing is that people who had the wrong mindset or weren't taking the right sort of actions, even if they were sort of a natural, what I would see is they would plateau and sometimes even decline, right? They never really seemed to get much better. Like they're sort of fixed. Whereas I saw people where they weren't very smooth, they were sort of maybe awkward, but whatever it might be, but they were so focused, they were so determined to win, they had such a growth mindset, and those people would end up surpassing the people that I thought were. So for me, it was like sort of an on the job learning, I guess, where it completely transformed my idea of who can and cannot, or who will and will not be successful in sales. That's sort of like the first thing. Whereas I think even people who are very successful in sales, and I hear this about a lot of sales leaders, or I hear these thoughts from a lot of sales leaders, they really think that it is about sales skills. And a lot of sales leaders even do think it's like, oh, this person's a natural, or you have it or you don't. And I just don't think that that's true. And so then I guess based on that sort of understanding, then it's like, okay, well, you bring on people with the right mindset who you think are going to take the right actions. And then layering on the sales skills to me is the easy thing thereafter, right? And then what you really want to do is create a system where it's like that they can have a well-worn path in terms of like, how do I win deals, how do I tackle these different situations, and then also as well have a culture where you have a culture of winning, and you have a culture of people supporting each other, and you have a culture of learning. And I'm really really big on development, but you have to have the right mindset for development. Like I think a lot about the fixed and growth mindset, and if people have more of a fixed mindset, they don't tend to develop. They're not really open to that, and it's a real challenge. Where somebody has a growth mindset, like it's almost the sky's the limits for them.
Okay, I like this a lot. And you mentioned mindset quite a few times. And this is what I think. It's almost impossible to shift the mindset for someone, especially when you have a busy sales organization or you inherit a team. Even
Mm-hmm.
if you hire someone yourself, because one off conversation won't give you the full picture whether they have the right mindset or not. And at the end of the day, we are dealing with salespeople. They might actually sell themselves very
Mm-hmm.
well at the beginning. What are your thoughts on this? Can we actually, like, should we even plan to change someone's mindset or just to get reality check about someone's mindset?
Ooh, that's good. That's a good question. I don't think that it's impossible, but I think to radically change someone's mindset is hard, to be honest. I really, really do. And I've done it before. Like I'm thinking of somebody from 2 companies ago that was on the team when I first joined. And by the time that I'd left together, she was doing probably 3 or 4x a quarter what she was when I first joined, right? And she radically shifted her performance, but it probably took about a year to shift her mindset, and so it was worthwhile. But I do think that that's pretty tough to radically shift someone's mindset from, let's say, something that's very fixed to sort of hyper growth oriented. I think it's easier to sort of course correct or make smaller changes. I think that's much more normal. But that's definitely something that I try to screen for. Like one of the top things I look for when I'm bringing somebody on is coachability, as an example, which is a pretty good proxy for, do they have a growth mindset.
This is really good. And there is another side to this. Right now, everybody's talking about efficiency, right? And I want to put two very different companies in nature as an example. You got bootstrap
Mm-hmm.
companies. Again, this is your runway. So if you are basically paying someone and they don't have the right
Mm-hmm.
mindset, if you want to build it, taking a year, it's just an example. I understand it might, for someone, might happen, instantly. Considering this example of having someone for a year means, like, I'm burning my runaway and I'm
Mm-hmm.
betting on this person, right? From
Mm-hmm.
the VC back company perspective, it's all about
Mm-hmm.
speed. Should we really focus on a few people that don't have the mindset to build it for them?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe another strategy that we see is a common practice. Let's afford them. Let's get new people and hope for the
Mm-hmm.
best. So I wanted to hear, from your perspective, how do we systematically even looking at this? Like, just imagine you inherited a team or you're building your own team. It's an early stage startup. What would be the best strategy considering the current climates with AI and everything?
Mm-hmm.
How do we make sure we build this balance, basically, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a good question. I mean, normally when I join a company, I almost inevitably end up letting somebody go when I first, and I mean, that's not my preference, obviously, but there are folks where it's like, maybe we could get you on the right track, but it's like, this is like, there's some things with respect to mindset and behavior that I'm like, I don't think that this is a good use of my time to sort of
Give us
sort
some
this out.
examples. I want to hear it.
Yeah, yeah. So a company I joined, there was a small sales team. I'll try to anonymize this a little bit, but a company I joined, and there was a small sales team in place. So something that I do is I have daily themed meetings with the team, and they were really quite upset that I was doing this, and they were going to be at 9 a.m. and they're like, I golf in the mornings, and I was like, yeah, I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, okay. So it's like, yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Right. And so like, and they were also underperforming, and there were other things going on too. It wasn't just that, but that was pretty clear. It was like, okay, I don't think that I need to, tell you
Babysit someone. Look,
yeah, yeah.
if someone heart and mind is not in the right place and they're just being laggard, I think it's good wake up call for them too. Maybe this is not a career, or maybe somewhere else they can actually shine.
Yes, yeah, yeah. So that was like a pretty like that was a pretty clear cut example where like that behavior and the mindset that would go into like that to me is just, and they were also underperforming. So that was pretty clear cut. Like some of the folks that I've brought on that, maybe like I think the key is like, well, how are they performing now? And then like, is there a pathway? I don't get too bothered about where someone's at the moment, but it's like, where are they at now? And then what is their trajectory? Like what trajectory do I see them on? Like, are they plateauing, or is it that they're being really honest where it's like, hey, like I'm not at quota right now. I really want to get there. Like can we work on that together, and then obviously I take responsibility in that and I want to help them with their development, but ultimately it's like, are they taking the lead in that? Are they taking ownership of that? A really clear thing with respect to mindset is I see this with a lot of sales teams or salespeople where they blame the leads, they blame the prospects, they blame the product, they're blaming everything, but they're not looking within, right? And so whereas salespeople who are struggling and they sort of view it as like it's like, no, no, this is something for me to fix and I'm in control of this. I just, those are people that I like to bet on, and those people tend to get better. Whereas folks who are, think that it's everything except for them, like that, it's very, very hard for those folks to get better. So I really think about it about sort of the trajectory, and then, like I said, there's certain things with respect to mindset or behavior where I'm like, I don't think it's my job to sort this out with an adult. Some of these things are a given.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah.
really like actually that example. Like, it's funny, but some people prioritize, other things in life, and that's totally fine. It's just our job is to give reality check and move forward with what we are hired to do. Do you believe your reps burn leads practicing on client calls? When it comes to giving them one-on-one coaching sessions, just don't have the bandwidth, so you get rid of them altogether? Or maybe you notice that your team spends a lot of time on non-revenue tasks like taking notes, updating CRM, or drafting emails. These are the exact challenges we solve for other revenue leaders like yourself. With Sell Me the Spend AI Coach, you can offer your reps role-play sessions at scale while automating one-on-one coaching sessions based on your best practices and methodology. Also, AI will take care of all their non-revenue tasks, like note-taking, CRM updates, draft the email for them, so they can focus on constant improvement while you're focusing on one thing and one thing only: revenue growth. If you're interested in learning more about the clients we are working with or use cases that might be beneficial to you, check us out at sellmethespend.ai. When I was reading the article, you mentioned something very important. You said, look, a sales leader should be truly empowered by the CEO. So I want to talk about that empowerment. What does this look like? Like, what is empowerment from CEO?
It's a really good question. So that is the number one thing that I screen for. Like if I'm like my last two companies that I've joined, so it's like, will I have the autonomy to make decisions? Oftentimes the sales team culture is different than the rest of the company culture. In a lot of ways, you do want to conform to certain company norms, of course, but a sales team is going to be different than an engineering team, as an example. And so, will I be allowed to make those sorts of decisions? Will I be allowed to do unpopular things? Because sometimes if things aren't going well and you need to course correct, like there will be some pain and friction with that. Obviously, it's not great, but you know, will I be supported through that? Right? How much control do I have over, I don't know, my budget and what we do and our sales strategy and pricing and all those sorts of things. Like I think this is why I prefer to work with startups. Like working with like a mid-level sales leader at a giant SaaS company, like a lot of my principles, they'd be like, well, this sounds really nice, but I have no control. I have no control over any of these things. Right. And so, I'm sure I could help those folks in other ways, but my article really is more geared towards people who do have autonomy and control within the org to shape it as it makes sense.
And one of the things that I really love about sales is it really helps us understand, who we are and
Hmm.
which company DNA matches better our personality and belief system beyond our skills. Because to your point, that autonomy, that you can make decisions, take risk, and put a line between, again, sales and other teams. That doesn't mean we build silos, but their activity is different. They are the athletes in the front lines. They most probably get punched in the face more than anyone else inside the organization. So even if the product has some problems, these are the guys who need to, again, talk to clients and have some shortcomings because of that. So I think, to your point, some of the activities and things we do should be a little different. Let's get into it. So how do you actually, build a winning culture? Because I know you have sort of like a playbook that you step by step
Mhm.
walk through, steps that is needed to build that winning culture. So I want you to break it down for us if you can.
Yeah, for sure. So in the article, I've got sort of 7 pillars. I think there's more, and I'm continuing to add it to it. I think it'll end up turning into a book. But the first one is we all win together, and so something that I see a lot with sales teams is they tend to have sort of like toxic competition. They tend to be sort of like siloed off, and so it's like you've got the BDRs over here, you've got the AEs over here. The AEs aren't very nice to the BDRs, so you've got things like that going on. And so what I try to do is I try to reframe things to being more towards like the collective as opposed to the individual. So as much as possible, it gets harder as you scale, but as much as possible, I try to do everything as a team. Right. And so it's like it's not like the BDR team meeting and the AE team meeting. Maybe we do those, but like when we do our daily sales team meeting, it's everybody. We're all getting together, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of like at a startup, a reframing that I try to do with people is that as we grow this company, like we're growing the pie, and then there's sort of like infinite opportunity that exists for all of us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it's like not only do you want to perform well so that you're well positioned to continue to progress and get more opportunities, but it's like as a company, it's like it's up to us to grow this company. And so we need everybody to be doing well in that system. And so like some things that I do as an example is I really like peer-to-peer mentoring. So it's like I'll set up an AE with a
Mm-hmm.
BDR as an example, those sorts of things, which are really quite powerful. So try to do a lot of that. Sort of the second principle that I've identified, and I used to err on this quite a bit, is belief over pressure. And so I think probably all sales leaders have been guilty of this or are guilty of this, myself included, where, like sort of the line that I came to is like, if you treat your team like losers, like don't be surprised when they play like it. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, you're not going to ask like Tom Brady. It's like, hey, Tom, like you're not going to like pressure him to go score a touchdown. It's like, no, it's Tom Brady. He's going to score like, he's going to do that. Right. And so it's like, but sales leaders do that all the time where they're like, hey, where's this deal at? Like, are you going to close this deal? They do these
Mm-hmm.
like, they do these pipeline reviews that people hate and that sort of thing. And basically what you're doing is you're treating your team like losers, because you wouldn't talk to like someone who you assume is going to win and be successful. You just wouldn't do that with them. Right. And so, and what I ended up finding was, and this is really interesting, is that with my particularly my last team, I really learned this lesson, is that when I would pressure them, because I do have really high expectations, they would end up just sort of falling over, because the thing was is that they were so hyper focused on winning and performing that they didn't need any extra push from me. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what they needed was my support, right? And so that I think is really really key. A third one is around vanity metrics. So this is kind of a goofy one, but this is something that I do a lot of, where I'm always trying to like stretch what is possible, right? And it's really interesting, like the limiting beliefs that people come up with, where it's like, together, for example, when I joined, like we'd only ever sold one 50K deal. And so in people's mind, a 50K deal was like, that was like the highest that you could go. Right. And we didn't really even have much close to that. Right. And then, so then I set, maybe we'll talk about this later, but I set a tattoo bet around, it's like person to get our first 6K deal or 6-figure deal. Right. And at the time when I said that, people were like that seemed crazy. Right.
You're
And
out
so
of your mind.
you're out of your mind. Yeah. And so I love doing those. Like they're very mind expanding, and you can really get people like to rally around them, and they're just like fun and goofy. Another thing in terms of winning is around metrics. So this is a really interesting thing. Like, I really try to simplify the metrics that we're tracking. So I try to keep it to 4. And this is really interesting, is like I see this with so many sales leaders where they're having their BDRs focus on like 20 metrics. They have their AEs focused on 20, and the thing is like most salespeople are not good at math, right? Like most salespeople don't understand statistics and metrics and that sort of thing. when you tell people that like 20 things are important, it effectively means that none of them are
Mm,
important, right?
yeah.
And then also, too, sometimes they can be at odds with each other as well in terms of how the metrics work.
Yeah.
And it just creates like a lot of confusion to people. I should also say, too, like I went to grad school for finance and economics. So it's like, it's not that I'm, a dummy or anything like that, but it's the simplicity of it's like we have one metric for top of funnel, like our BDR, SDR team, closed one and discounted forecast for our AEs and AMs, and then a retention metric like GDR or NRR for our AM team or CS team, depending on how you split it. And we just stay really, really laser focused on that. And then the other thing too is that I try to be really, really honest with people about where we're at, and it's a bit of a fine balance. Where like, if we end up behind in a quarter, it's like you don't want to tell people it's like, hey, yeah, we're doing great, everything's fine, that's right. And so a lot of sales leaders and even companies tend to err on that side where it's like all sunshine and rainbows even when
Mhm.
you're missing the mark. Or people sort of go, I don't think I've ever been guilty of that, but or you go the other way, which I have been guilty of, where it's you're behind and then you just become like a monster with your sales team, right? Like, and so that I I'd love to share that clip with some of my sales team because they'll laugh at that. Like I have been guilty of that. And so what I've tried to do over the last few years is strike that balance of it's like, hey, here's where we're at. Like, like we can still win, like we can still get to where we want to go, but being honest about it. And I don't see a lot of that. And in my weekly kickoff meeting I do with the team, it's like we review these four metrics.
Mhm.
And I focus much more on how are we, like, what's our closed one on the month as a team? What's our closed how many demos have sat as a team. So I tend to focus more on the team as opposed to the individual. I do leaderboards as well,
Yeah.
but much more on that. The other thing is employee driven development. So this is a really interesting thing where this was also something that I learned in the last few years was that because there was a bit of a gap between me and the people that were reporting to me is that I've always felt like I was in charge of my own success, and I do have limiting beliefs as anyone does, but I don't have nearly as many as most people will say, and so. Um, for me, it was just like, oh, the sky's the limit. Like I'll just and my career is, I've really sort of shot forward quickly in my career as a result of that. Whereas most people, they're sort of like, oh, I'm going to wait on Thomas to tell me what I can progress to. Thomas is going to tell me what my gaps are, and people really sort of defer ownership of their career to their manager. I think that. And so it was really a gap, and it was almost like a source of confusion. So I ended up doing get my teams together in person every quarter, and so I did a team session on this just to explain that it's like, no, like you guys are in charge. Like you tell me where you want to go, and you tell me what those sorts of things. And so having people have that ownership, and it's not, I feel like that could be misunderstood as me abdicating responsibility or me just being it's not that at all, but it's like it really has to come from that person. So a couple things that I mentioned in the article around this would be my promotion framework is really, really simple. So it's not like you have to hit all these matrix competencies and it happens twice a year and it goes to some committee, nothing like that. It's that you crush your target and you be a good teammate. Like those are my two criterias. Right. And it's very, very simple. And I remember 2 companies ago, I had one of my SDRs. She was brand new to sales and she made it up to level 2 AE within like a year and a half. And we were doing enterprise sales. So that was a pretty big deal that she progressed that way. And I was like, great. Like I promoted her twice in a year. And if you had asked me at the start of the year, would she get promoted twice? I'd probably say no, because I wouldn't have expected that, level of performance, but she did. And it's like, great. Like, and so I would never hold anyone back for those reasons or politics or any of those sorts of things. So it's like people feel like they're in control of their own destiny. And then the other thing that I started doing was OKRs. And so I found that because I have such a deep belief in the people that work for me, but I felt like I was putting like it's like I was sort of putting like what I thought they could be on them. And then I was getting some resistance with that. And I was like, why is that the case? And it's like, oh, it's like, well, I wouldn't like if somebody told me like where I'm going and what I can be
Mhm.
and all that sort of thing. And so we started doing OKRs, where it's like they would set their objective. So it's like, what's your objective? Right. It's like, I'm not going to tell you like who you should be. It's like, you tell me who you want to be. And then so they do that, then they'd set some key results, and then they'd set the activities for how they're going to achieve that. And it was really like that switch was such a good transformation, because then people really own their development, they own their plan for their development. And then also it was super helpful for me, because then it's like, oh, okay, I know what I'm coaching you towards, right? It's like, one of my BDRs is like, okay, they want to be an AM, not an AE. It's like, okay, great. Like, it's like I can help them with that, as opposed to me being like, hey, you should be an AE. And it's something we do like very seriously. Like I've heard this from some people where they do these growth plans and then they do them once a year and it's like an HR checkbox or whatever. Like that's not what it's meant to be at all. And then the other thing too is we would all post them publicly on Confluence, so we could all see them. I would also do my own as well, so people could see what I was working on, and then we would do like a monthly check-in on that. So that was really helpful. The other pillar is high care, high expectations. So I have very high expectations for folks, but it also comes with a lot of care. So it's like, yeah, we have employee driven development, but it's like if somebody wants like extra coaching, or they're like, hey, we need training on this, or what have you, it's like I'm always there to meet them where they're at. I think like the worst model is probably like high expectations, low care, which you see a lot.
Often.
Yeah. Where it's like I expect you to crush it and you're on your own. Like, whereas for me, it's like I have all the time in the world for the people working
Sink
for
or
me.
swim.
And yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I think whenever because a lot of my team have or my old team have sort of dispersed to different companies after I left. And I was joking with someone. I was like, sounds like you've got high expectations, low care at your
Like,
and she's like, yeah, it's tough. It's like, yeah, even high care, high expectations can be tough sometimes, but the idea is that like I take their development as being very, very important. And to me, it's like, I don't know, it's a big responsibility, I think, to be a people manager, people leader. And so I take that really seriously. So some things I do within that is very, very heavy on coaching. And I hear coaching sort of get misused sometimes, I think. And you're asking me about this. So in the article, I break down telling, training versus coaching. So telling would be like, hey, do this, right? There's a place for that sometimes. Like as an example, it's like, I don't know, every deal over 50K has to go to our legal team first or something.
no.
Like that's something like you're not really going to do coaching on that, I don't think. Like, telling there is pretty normal. But oftentimes I think sales leaders really default to telling, where a salesperson's like, hey, can you help me with this deal? And then they just jump into it's like, well, here's what you do. Right. And that would be like a really negative way of doing talent. There's training. So I think training, like once again, has a place. So like, let's say, I don't know, you're doing like medic training, or you're doing, I don't really like medic to be honest, but you're doing medic, or you're doing Sandler, or whatever it is.
Whatever methodology framework.
Yeah. Like that, that's a good place for training. Or it's like you're rolling out a new product, or whatever it might be. And then in terms of coaching, I try to default as much as I can to coaching, and it's a difficult switch, I think. And I've coached sales leaders on doing this, and it is hard for some reasons, like good reasons. But really, like what it is it's that you are asking questions of your salesperson, and it's really quite empowering. And then ultimately, you end up sort of working together on the problem from a more equal footing, let's say. So I tend to take more of a coaching approach, and more like ad hoc, like let's say deal support if I'm doing that, in one-on-ones with people, and then also as well do either one-on-one or group coaching, which I prefer group coaching now as opposed to one-on-one, but also do that as well. And then the last thing would be around comp. So I think a lot of sales teams or companies, like their comp is not like doesn't function the way that it should, and so it tends to be like really, really complex. I found this a lot when I first got into sales, because I was doing direct sales and I was also managing third party. And so I got to go work with all these different sales companies around the US, and a lot of them were really quite exceptional. But I would talk to their salespeople and be like, what, how's your commission calculated? And they'd have no idea. Right. Because it was just like, this John Nash, like beautiful mind math problem to figure out their sales comp, right? And so it's like, well, like if you don't know the actions that need to be taken to get the money, then it's like that's a huge problem, right? And so simplicity, having it be known, time that's like I did X outcome to I get paid, this thing, having that be as short as possible. So it's much more motivational that way. And then something I see a lot of sales team err on is that they tend to comp their salespeople on things that are not in their control. So, as an example, a really common one would be like BDRs on my teams, like they get paid for qualified demos sat, right? But on a lot of teams, like they might only get paid if the deal closes,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, but I mean, the BDR could have done their job, and then the AE sucks, and then the BDR is not going to get paid, right? Like that's, and so I see things like that, and I think that that's quite problematic. It also creates those hostilities that you get between teams as well, so that
Yeah.
can also be a problem. Another thing that I see is that a lot of sales teams or companies, they start to wind back comp once their salespeople are making a lot of it. So somebody, I've had a lot of conversations with people in finance where they're like, your salespeople are making too much money, and it's like, that's a high class problem to me. It's like, and it's
They are making money for the company too.
yeah. It's like they're making money, and we should be happy about that because we're making money. And so, but a lot of companies do that where it's like somebody smashes quota, and then like, oh, now we got to change quota, and it's like,
That's
well,
how you lose your high performers.
for
For sure.
sure, for sure. I've heard that from so many people, and salespeople are really vulnerable in the roles, right? Because it's like, unlike most jobs, it's like depending on where you're at, it's like 50% of your pay is variable, and so you have to trust that the company has clear, well-defined rules, and it's not some changing game. And if you win the game, they're not going to change the rules on you, right? It's like, no, it's like, let it roll, like keep making money, right? And so that's really important. And then the other thing that I do that's I think relatively unique is I do pay transparency with people. Everybody on the team knows what everybody's comp structure is, including my own. I have it in a doc. I share it with people periodically. And this is like, I still have to think about this one a little bit more. But one, it's quite motivating to people because it's like the BDRs are like, oh, sick. Like if I get to
Hmm.
be, if I get to the level one AE role, it's like, here's what I'm going to be making. They love that. And I think that there's something about, I think it creates trust where people are like, oh, here, we know what Thomas makes. Like, and people, I don't know, people seem to really, really appreciate that. Like for me, transparency is very, very important. Like I'm not into playing games. I'm not into hiding. Like tend to be very upfront and honest with my sales teams about everything, basically.
Look, you shared a lot of great stuff. I try to, you know, mention what I remember.
Okay, sure.
But the first point was extremely important, and I experienced this in multiple companies, that we tend to celebrate people differently.
Mm-hmm.
If a BDR brought an enterprise account and AE closed it, and maybe sales engineer was involved, maybe
Mm-hmm.
we pulled someone from product even, because it was a bigger deal. And I have a real life example. I remember I was working at this company, 100 plus sellers, and we had a channel literally celebrating AEs when the deal was closed. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I started doing, start tagging whoever was involved in the deal. Said, guys, congrats to that person and congrats to all of you guys. It's a
Mm-hmm.
collective, effort. And it turned to be a practice after a little while. So even reps who closed the deal started tagging folks who helped them close the
Mm-hmm.
deal. So getting really everyone close together and appreciated as a team effort, to your point, rather than, hey, this is an AE deal, because everybody's contributing to that.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I really like what you said, and it's very rare, is to have peer-to-peer sessions, but outside of their own group. So if you have an SDR org, typically what we see a common practice is you mix and match them within the team. So how much do they want to teach each other? You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, they can get a little bit better. Like the whole idea is not to give them like one-on-one training, is to understand what's going on in someone else's in the org in their life, how they're actually running certain deals, and build these relationships. You have someone you can reach out to even when you have questions. So this way you build an ecosystem of people who are willing to teach and learn. And I really like this idea of pair them actually with an AE, with an AM. At some point, maybe even switch this,
Mm-hmm.
let's say, role, so they can, especially with people in XDR sort of like a seat who just maybe got started in sales, give them a perspective on what next might look like. And I like the transparency that you said. This is part of it too. Look, this is the type of role you're going to have. Like if you are an AE, this is their life. This is how their day to day look like. Does this even resonate with your vision as what success might look like in a year or two moving forward. So I really like that idea. You mentioned about, again, telling, training, and coaching. That's a whole different, again, topic that we
Mhm.
can open up and have another conversation on. What I like about this is that this is a problem we are trying to solve. Like, this has been
Mhm.
a very big challenge, even for me, working with multiple different sales organizations. First and foremost, we tend to skip coaching because typically we promote, again, high performing reps with no coaching background, and we don't give them any development in their role. Pretty much the same as some organizations who, throw people right into the pool. Hey, sink or swim, or do whatever you want to do. Save yourself. We got, we give you a job. That's a shot. This company is growing. We just, raise millions. We all should be grateful. But in reality, even those managers need development, obviously, to be able to be that coach. And even if they have the mindset, because they're getting compensated on certain other things, they forget that the job is coaching. Anyways, so that's another topic I don't want to open because it's going to be a big can of worms. Now, in regards to what you mentioned about the vanity metrics, I really like that.
Mhm.
I want you to actually share the story. Did you get a tattoo too? Because I saw those pictures. Was it in your back?
Yeah, one of those is me. Yeah.
You have it on there. I'm not going to ask you to take the shirt off and show it to the audience. There's a picture on his website if you guys want to go. It's real.
Mhm.
I actually really, really like this idea. I know, as crazy as it sounds, because some people are just like, hey, I don't want tattoos. Like, what are you talking
Mm.
about? But I literally have a goal of getting a tattoo if you're actually hitting a target this quarter. So I'm with you. Sometimes, like, doing some of these like fun moves, and the
Mhm.
expectations from a CRO or someone who's actually running the sales org is always someone very serious,
Mhm.
comes in, we have orders coming in, and why not actually making it fun? We spend most of our, life right now at work, if not half of it, maybe, I don't know.
Mhm.
Why not working on something that you actually enjoy and add a little bit of fun to it? So I like that
Mhm.
as well. Now, I have a question about the metrics part though. You
Mhm.
mentioned there are, four major metrics that we are tracking, so we don't make things complicated. You're looking at close ratio, you're looking at our retention and our whatever it might be, and also you're looking at the discounted deals. What was the fourth one?
Yeah, so a top of funnel. So this could be basically what your SDRs or BDRs are targeting. So typically it'd be demo call sat, like the prospect sits with the AE, or it could be discovery call sat if your AEs are doing the disco.
Actually, it's not a question, it's more of a comment, because what I like about this, that brings clarity. Like, this is my
Yes.
job. This is the only North Star I have to be focused on. The rest, I always have this rule and tell the guys, rule of 80/20. Let's dumb it down. 80% of your focus is on this. Anything else, you're learning about something new, you're trying a new method, whatever it might be, goes in that 20% bucket. However you want to manage this, like, your goal
Mhm.
is to book meetings, for example. Your goal is to close your accounts. Sometimes I see people make this really complicated. I remember I was at this company, I was a rep, and we were talking about
Mhm.
like ACV, CAC, all that stuff. Look, I'm not a founder. I don't
Yeah.
want to go sell. Like, this is good general information, and I think
Mhm.
if there is a problem with the way we are looking at our ACV or CAC, it's a bigger conversation with the
Yes.
C-suite, that maybe we are actually missing something that we need to figure out, and
Mhm.
there is no really need to, I don't know, confuse our team with
Mhm.
additional information they might not be able to be leveraging on. My last question, I know, look, we talk about a lot of great stuff. We can continue this for hours, but I
Mhm.
wanted to get your thoughts on internal promotion stuff. You said, look, I had an A, she got promoted in a year and a half, and she was even selling enterprise, but she crushed her quota targets, and she was a great team player.
Mhm.
And I'm with you. Like, I suffer in this a lot. Like, before, I was high performing, bringing all, carrying all the
Mhm.
numbers. So when it comes to promotions, like, again, although I was asking, I was not getting it. But different
Mhm.
story. Politics, sometimes get involved, especially when companies grow, at certain size. But when you say a be a great teammate, like, of course,
Mhm.
targets we can track, we can see, how you're pacing, toward your quota, or if you have a benchmark.
Mhm.
Who's a great teammate, and how can we make sure that we are not biased about our decision to have a tag along as someone who's great or not?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, that one is certainly. I mean, it's certainly less criteria than I'm going to say most companies, like my two. But you are right to say that you are right to say that it is subjective. And I don't try to make it an objective thing, but people do ask me about that. And it's funny too, actually, because normally it's like the people who are the best teammates, they end up asking me about this in one-on-ones where they're like, I just want to make sure, like, how do I make sure it's like you're good, right? Like, don't worry about it. Like, I guess the reason that I added that sort of like, it's more like an asterisk almost, is that I would see people who are exceptional closers or exceptional at getting deals done, but they were perpetuating a really toxic, negative culture within the org. And that was, especially if you're starting out, because the early people on your sales team are so important for what lies ahead. And, they're the foundation for how you're going to scale, right? And so for me, it's a reminder that it's like, this is not just your individual pursuit, but it's like, we're all here to help each other. We need to be good to each other. We can't be having conflict, those sorts of things. And so it's like, I'm not going to promote someone who's an asshole like that. Like that's basically what that means. And so, but it can look it can look different in a lot of ways. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, I had two really exceptional SDRs, and I thought very well of both of them. One of them actually came over from a previous company I was at. He was an ops manager, and he wanted to. I thought he'd be great at sales, so I brought him over to the next company I was at, and he started out as an SDR. Lovely, lovely person. And then there's a more established SDR on the team who was probably coming up on a promotion. And both lovely guys, but they ended up just locking horns immediately. I didn't expect it at all. And I remember talking to them, and I was like, no one's getting promoted till you guys sort this out.
Yeah.
It's like, because you can't be having this like toxic, because they were just, what it was is that both of them had such a deep drive to be successful and to win. And it's funny, actually, the one, he got married this past summer, and he ended up inviting the other guy. So now they're actually quite close, and we got it sorted out. It took a few months, but it's like those sorts of, it's the more obvious things, as opposed to like, oh, I need you to be mentoring X number of people. Like, it's not like that. It's
Yeah.
more, it's like, are you contributing to our culture? Are you a positive presence on our team? And that can be quite different across different people. So, but yes, that is a little bit subjective. Yeah.
Makes sense. And look, at the end of the day, someone needs to make a decision. It's so easy again from the end user or rep perspective to say, look, Tom doesn't like me, or you know what, this is dictatorship. Whatever the hell I do, I'm not gonna get promoted. Honestly, I don't have an answer how to systematically say, hey, you're considered as a great team player, and at the end of the day, you're leader of that organization. By being transparent again, showing even how much you're getting paid,
Mm,
by trying to again get everyone in the team close together, I think this should be expected that there's already a trust built because I
yes.
put something from my end, and having this again openness about everything that pretty much we do. So I'm expecting you to accept my leadership as your leader. Otherwise, we have big problems here. Or maybe not. I don't know. But I don't know if there's a way we can actually measure it and say, you're not an asshole, you're a great person.
Yeah, I think the objective asshole criteria. Like, I think I will say that as I've gotten, as sort of the team cultures that I build have gotten more and more developed, and these sort of principles I think are more second nature to me, and I keep adding to them. Like, it's very, very rare that that's even a consideration. Like, generally speaking, people are getting along really quite well. They're helping each other out. Like, that's the norm. Like, it's actually, at this point, whereas my earlier teams, where I wasn't as good of a leader. I was still, I was like a little baby sales leader, basically. Like, we did have a lot of sort of this more
Learning
like,
on the show.
yeah, we had sort of more of this like toxic competition and and so I did have pause about like, oh, I don't like, if I promote this person, is that sending a bad message about, what our
Yeah.
team culture like. But these days, like, it's very, very rare, I would say. Like, it's more about like one-off conflicts that are more, they're resolvable. Like, yeah, like, I haven't had any big issues, or haven't had anybody held back undue because of this. So it's more just a reminder of the importance of this. That's not just about individual performance.
That's great to hear, especially again in when we talk about tech and startups and fast growing companies, I think founders, again, if they get to that scale, they're mature enough to at least do basic qualification when they hire people so they didn't get someone crazy. But, anyways, I know we are about time. If someone wants to reach out, can they and how?
Yeah, definitely. You can find me on LinkedIn, so Thomas Waits, or can go to my website, which is twsales.com, and my contact info on there. Might find my articles helpful.
Amazing. Tom, I really enjoyed this conversation. I appreciate you again showing up. And guys, I hope you enjoyed as well. And until next time, bye for now.
Thanks so much, Michael.